Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Teen Empowerment, presenting its annual Community Luncheon, marking over 20 years of youth leadership making an impact in Rochester, Wednesday, May 7th at the Riverside Convention Center. Tickets online at teenempowerment.org/Rochester. And Mary Cariola Center, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson, believing an informed and engaged community is a connected one. MaryCariola.org.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour was made on Zillow's Market Heat Index. Here's the latest. If you're buying a home, the top 3 markets in the country to be a buyer. Number 3, Miami, Florida. Number 2, McAllen, Texas. Number 1, Cape Coral, Florida. Lots of homes available. Big inventories. If you're a buyer, the 3 worst home markets, I should say, to be seeking to purchase a house. Number 3, San Francisco. Number 2, San Jose. Number 1, Rochester, New York. Number 1 for sellers, number 1 million or so for buyers. The Rochester Business Journal says there's no end in sight to Rochester being a seller's market and a headache for buyers. The spring influx of inventory hasn't arrived. Inventory remains historically low. 6 more weeks of Rochester housing winter. I don't know, maybe 6 more years of it. And now we will see how the new administration's policies affect the housing market. CNET Money says that the bond market reaction to tariffs could lead to higher mortgage rates, although the intense volatility makes anything hard to predict. And here's what Newsweek says about the effect of tariffs on new home construction. Quote, construction prices have surged for the 3rd straight month, according to an Associated Builders and Contractors analysis of U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics data. Reflecting the early impact of sweeping tariffs, the tariffs will affect the price of key materials used in home building and have the potential to discourage new development, end quote. This hour, we check in with people working every day with the local market, the local inventory, buyers and sellers. We'll take your questions and comments as well. If you want to join the conversation, I want to know if you're looking for a home or if you're putting it off, or if you're selling and loving the idea of selling as long as you already have somewhere else to go. I mean, it's tough for buyers. It's great for sellers. And let's talk about that with our guest this hour. Mark Seawick is a broker and owner of Elysian Homes by Mark Seawick & Associates. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much, Bud.
Across the table is Lainey Bittner, associate real estate broker with Remax Plus. Welcome back to you.
Thank you very much.
And welcome back to the program to Angie Flack Brown, real estate salesperson and CEO of Angie Flack Brown Realty Group, Inc. That's part of Keller Williams Realty. Welcome back to you as well.
Thank you very much.
Tough times, Angie? I mean, I guess it depends, right?
It does depend. On my team, I do most of the listings. I work with the sellers. So I'm not having as I'm not having as rough of a time as my partner James, who's working with the buyers. Although I did have a buyer this last couple of months. And it was emotionally taxing, to say the least.
I mean, aren't most sellers also buying? I mean, maybe not all of them.
No.
If you're in good shape there,
we're having the conversations around the 4 Ds: death, divorce, debt, and downsizing.
Yep.
So most of my listings, they're going to Florida, they're going to a nursing home. Perhaps they've passed away. They're getting a divorce, and they're not buying.
Nobody wants to buy or sell right now. Nobody wants to sell. The people who are involved in the market are the people who have to. They have to. There's just no, I want to buy the red house down the street, which was the case for so many years, decades, it seems.
Yep, agreed.
Okay. Well, what are you seeing, Lainey? How is it out there?
Same thing. It's rough. I do see people that are buying. It's a little bit, it's a lot different than it used to be, where you could wait, you could list your house, and then you could go find something and buy it. Now, if you're buying and selling, you have to buy first. You have to find something, because it could take forever to find something that you want to buy. So my clients that are buying and selling and staying locally, they need to buy first to find what they want to win an offer, and then they're comfortable with the fact that when they list it, they'll most likely sell pretty quickly.
Yeah, contingent offers are a thing of the past.
Tell me more about that.
Well, it used to be that you would look for a house and say to the seller of the house, "Hey, I want to buy your house, but I got to sell my house first," and they'd say, "Okay." Can't do that anymore because there's so many buyers competing, and there's people out there willing to pay cash and close in 30 days. Why would a seller?
No contingencies, no inspections.
Nope.
Just get out there. Go ahead, Lainey.
I don't know if I completely agree with that statement. I think that's loosened up a little bit. I think we have changed in the way that I think a few years ago, right after COVID, and I think the years that I was here speaking a little bit more as on behalf of the board when I was president, I think that was you definitely could not. But I think now things aren't going as crazy. I think to me what I'm seeing is like a lot of one-level livings are still insane, under a certain price is still insane. Things that are still really updated, those are the things that are just going gangbusters. But if you get a little bit further outside of Rochester, Monroe County, you might be able to find something that, because I have heard about people getting contingent offers, things that maybe some things are sitting a little bit, not real long, but maybe sitting a little bit, and you might have good luck. I mean, I just had clients who were VA buyers, which has been traditionally been challenging lately, and they needed some seller's concessions, and we got a house. It was. I mean, it was rough, but they hung in there. We hung in there, and they were pretty aggressive about going after things that maybe had been sitting for a little bit. So there are pockets of that, but you really have to be patient. You really have to figure it out.
I was watching this video that Mark put out recently, just trying in a minute to explain the heat index, and we don't have to know what the numbers mean to look at the index and go, oh my goodness. As an example, every city in the country, Cleveland, Ohio, and Cincinnati, Ohio, and Los Angeles, they're all given a number on the Zillow heat index, Mark. And the average, I think, is 70, you said in the video? The average?
Right, yeah.
So
yeah.
Forget what that means. Just know that the average housing market in terms of inventory, is it better for buyers or sellers? The equilibrium is 70.
Yep.
You're in the top 10 if you're around 80.
86, I think. Yep.
And Rochester has been as high as 169. I saw 146 today, so
Oh, okay. So things are getting better.
Right. Like I said, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible.
What's crazy about that is that we're at 169, 149, whatever the number might be. Then you drop down to Cleveland and some of these others, and you suddenly have to drop down 40 points, another 40 points. And then when you get to like 86, I think it is, every other community in the United States has a market that is a seller's market, I believe, a buyer's market. Yeah, buyer's. That's incredible. I mean, so number one, and not just by a little, but by quantum leaps. It really is insane, and it really underscores, I think, the fact that you go back to March of 2017, 2,500 homes available for sale in the 6-county region. Today in the 6-county region, there are about 335. And then when you take into consideration that about 200 of them are located in the Crescent here in Monroe County, meaning that neighborhood that is distressed, that those properties just sit forever. That means that there's nothing available. And let me go back to those numbers in case I screw those up. In the 6-county region, there's about 660 properties available for sale. 335 of those are in Monroe County. So,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, and again, these lists, just week after week after week, Zillow is putting out a different list, and we're always in the top 5 of these lists in terms of the number of properties that are available for sale, or the lack of property that's available for sale, the decrease in the number of properties over the course of the past 5 years, the number of properties that are selling with bidding wars, how many properties are selling over asking price as a result of bidding wars. Just week after week after week, it's another metric in which we are prevailing.
And to the point that you all make about people who are in the market right now because they have to be, there is one side of my brain that's going, how come everybody's not selling? It's a seller's market. It's great. There's not a lot of inventory. But the problem is,
we're going to go.
If that was by choice, where are they going to
Right.
go, right? So then they would have to become buyers as well, and you haven't really solved anything there. So, but listeners, if you've got questions, comments, I do want to hear from you. I've got a few already, but I'll take as much as we can this hour for our guests. And it is 844-295-TALK. If you want to call the program toll-free, 844-295-8255. 263-WXXI if you're calling from Rochester, 263-9994. Email the program connections@wxxi.org. Join us in the chat on our YouTube page at WXXI News. Tim says everything seems overpriced. Are any neighborhoods or towns underpriced? Okay, everyone. Anywhere that you think is under.
Nothing. The same people who were saying 5 years ago, I'm not going to buy that property, it's overpriced. They've lost out on a 62 to 65% increase in the value of property over the course of the past 5 years. It's not overpriced, and that's going to continue because the latest studies show that we are 18,000 units shy.
It can't continue forever, right?
All right, so let's assume that today all these governments, these town boards, et cetera, are going to start approving these subdivisions that are going to be built.
Everybody laughed in this room
because that's not happening. That's what has to happen. Is we need to see an increase in inventory. We need to see building happening, and it's not happening. The towns need to be a little bit more loose with their zoning. And a lot of them have really resisted that. So, and it's
is this a NIMBY issue?
Yes. As I've spoken to the town, as I've spoken to the builders, one after another, you get 8 or 10 people who are showing up at a town board or a planning board meeting saying, no, I don't want this built. I don't want this built. But the builders are saying they've got a list of 200 or some people who would buy in that subdivision, and so. That's a lot of it is NIMBYism, but also to your point, Lainey. I mean, a lot of it also is the problems of the obstruction. I mean, it costs $35,000 to $55,000, maybe $60,000 just to get a site ready.
Right.
To put a house on top of that site, and then you couple on top of that. Go ahead, Angie.
I was just going to say one of my issues right now is we have a ton of land. Let's just use Monroe County, okay? Let's use. I don't know, Hilton as an example.
Okay.
House is sitting on an acre of land. The seller or the owner may say, hey, I want to subdivide this and I want to build a house next door for my aging parents. Not allowed. We put an addition on our house a few years ago in Brighton because my mother-in-law had to live with us. And it was difficult to get the size that we wanted because every town has restrictions. Every town has rules. My prayer is that every town will start to say, hey, we're going to loosen up some of these things. We can put an auxiliary housing unit on, half an acre, because that is going to start to grease the machine so that we have people moving and people can sell and people can buy. But right now, we're landlocked everywhere.
Well, and Angie, we just talked to some of the board members in the town of Pittsford who have made some amendments to what they're doing. Do you urge people, no matter where they live, to talk to their local government about this?
Well, they only care if they're trying to buy something, and so
and then by the time you do, it looks like a crisis,
and then it's too late, right? So I actually am I'm a national federal political coordinator through the National Association of Realtors. I'm going down to D.C. to talk to people on Capitol Hill in May about trying to get some national pressure to some of the local municipalities to allow some of this, because most people, it's like, oh, it's a great idea, but not in my backyard.
Right. That's exactly right. I mean, the state tried to do that a few years ago. The governor tried to do that, and there was a big uproar about allowing ADUs and in people's backyards. And it's again,
an ADU is accessory dwelling unit.
Yes, sorry. Yeah. Yes. Yep. Sorry. Accessory dwelling unit, and it's to get those because again, to Angie's point is. Again, you have, maybe millennials that are moving back home or now, the younger generation that's moving back home or older parents that want to age on the same lots as family. And so building an ADU in the backyard could help with some of that. But people just kind of go crazy about what's allowed in that. Am I going to rent it out? Who's going to rent it? That sort of thing.
What happens when my mother dies? Am I going to be allowed to rent it? Is it going to sit there empty?
Yeah.
And when people hear about new rentals in towns, that's when they get mad. We don't want any more rentals. Yet people need places to live.
Yeah, and to Mark's point about just new builds, let's set aside ADUs, just new builds in general, but building a house now, it is expensive.
Yep.
And when I look at, from what I'm seeing in the data about construction prices, materials, et cetera, it doesn't look to me like that's going to get better anytime soon.
No. I mean, you layer on top of a long-standing difficulty and problem that we've had. And then you layer on top of that tariffs and the incredible increase in the price of lumber and other things that are coming from Canada, who is responsible for so much steel. Exactly. I mean, you're looking at 20-30% increase in the value and the cost of those items alone. So it's not going to get easier anytime soon. But let's just take a 1,500 square foot house. Very, very $250 per square foot, if you're lucky to find that, right? $250 that's $375,000 just in construction costs. You put on top of that a lot that's going to cost you $50,000. You're looking at $425,000 for a 1,500 square foot house. That's
insane.
A lot of money. And so until government comes together and we need the federal government. We need the state government. We need the county, and we need municipal governments to come together. And then probably, more likely than not, we're going to need some kind of assistance from, let's say ESL, They've got what
A lot of
$300 million that they can dole out to actually help, say, minority individuals or those who have a particular need. Because the real need, I think we would all agree,
affordable housing.
is
It's
affordable. Yes,
affordable.
exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
that's, and I know a couple.
And my apologies.
That's
Affordable
okay.
housing in the minds of so many is, let's call it first-time buyers housing. I think that's more palatable.
Right.
In the
Affordable
estimate.
is a really kind of, it's a word that means a lot of different things
Right.
to a lot
Yes,
of
yes,
different
that's what
people.
it-
And
yeah,
it has
yeah.
certain connotations.
Well, and I think,
Yeah.
and I think in terms of certain price points, as I said earlier, that's one of the areas that I still see going crazy. We're having multiple offers. Is anything that's considered affordable in our area? Really, I would say that's probably anything under like 250, right? 200, which is for some other people that's unaffordable, right? But that you see a lot of people looking in that price point. And I know a few weeks ago you had on Jim Yackel and some other folks from the Housing
Yep.
Initiative working on some of the things that Mark was just talking about, trying to figure out, trying to bring groups of people together from a local government, from a chamber perspective, all those things to really try and figure out how to tackle this, because it can't be siloed. It can't be just one group of people that are
Right.
trying to do it. And we took that initiative on. We started that initiative when I was president of the real estate board a few years back, because we realized it's a big, huge issue that you need to bring multiple people together, different politicians, local, state, federal, everything, to try and figure out how to tackle this problem locally, because it's not going away. The inventory is continuing to be just decline over years, and creating the seller's market. That's just difficult.
I just want to go back to the question that was posed to you a few moments ago. Somebody saying, everything is overpriced.
Yeah, you didn't all tell me where the secret underpriced
There's
neighborhoods or
no
towns
secret.
are.
That is- yes,
It's
they
still
do.
a secret.
But let's go back to the notion that we are shy 18,000 units here in Monroe County alone. Okay. Let's say that we build 1,000 units,
Which would be a lot.
next year.
Right.
Do you think we're going to build 1,000 units next year?
Where?
Yeah, Lainey?
No.
So, but let's say theoretically that we're going to build 1,000 units next year, and it's going to be 18 years before we even get to
That would be
today's
6% of the need.
Exactly. So this is just going to go on for quite a while to come. And so I, in a blog that I just wrote recently, and people did not push back. I thought that people were going to push back. I said, you need to, quote unquote, overpay. You need to get your foot in the door because you want to, at the age of 65 or 70, own a house free and clear. And so let's say that you overpay by $25,000 or $50,000. Well, if property values continue to increase in the way that they are, you're gonna be perfectly fine within 2-3 years tops.
But when you say overpay, like what do you? I mean, are you saying
nobody's
overpaying
overpaying.
or paying over? Right, because people aren't overpaying.
Yeah.
Because overpaying implies that the buyers, the market is driving these prices, right? That's why there's no secret place that's underpriced, right?
Yeah.
It's it's again basic economy. Like there's a lot of demand and not nearly enough supply, as Mark has been stating with some numbers. So there's nowhere that's a secret place to go. You have to. There are pockets, as I said. Like I mean, there are certain houses. If you see something sitting on the market for a little bit longer than past the delayed negotiations, there may be opportunities there. So you really have to be very specific about what you're doing in terms of if in that competitive situation. If competitive situation is something that is difficult for you to compete against based on price, based on type of financing that you may have to get, then you need to be very specific about what you're doing.
Angie?
I would just like to sort of circle back to that question. So what I'm finding, and in my soapbox right now, is senior housing. Part of the reason we have the problem we're having is that seniors are staying in their homes longer, they're living longer, they're not doing the downsizing, they're not moving to Florida, but now they have nowhere to go. There's not enough senior housing, so they're staying there. And if we could get some more senior housing built and get those people moved, that would be great. So when they sell their houses, though, and I'm seeing this with all my listings, they're very dated. They're 1960s, 1970s, 1980s. So that's the group of houses that are not terribly overpriced. They're still overpriced. But if you can find something that needs a lot of work, you're going to find a little bit better of a deal.
I think
Lainey's giving me a look.
I'm sorry. Well, because I think it depends on where you are, because certain markets, I mean, again, those clients that I just told you that bought, they were in an area that was affordable, and we were going into some things that were very dated and, estates that hadn't been updated or had some trouble with them, and investors were swooping in,
That's
right?
true, too.
So depending on where it is and what the price point is you're now competing against investors who have
cash.
unlimited cash and who can come in and who can do those fixes. So really, again, you kind of have to find those little pockets, and you have to really pay attention to what's going on in the market in each listing based on what your clients are looking for.
Let me take some feedback from listeners as you're hearing Lainey Bittner, Associate Real Estate Broker with RE/MAX Plus, Angie Flack Brown with the Angie Flack Brown Realty Group, part of Keller Williams Realty. Mark Seawick, broker and owner of Elysian Homes by Mark Seawick and Associates. It's 844-295-TALK if you want to call us and talk about this. Are you looking for a house? Are you amazed like I was recently with what a house 4 doors down sold for? And you go like, whoa. 844-295-8255. 263-WXXI if you're in Rochester. 263-9994. Again, email the program connections@wxxi.org. Okay, long note from James talking about his mom. Said his mom was thinking about downsizing or buying a house, but then lost 20% of her 401k in about a week and decided I'm staying where I am. And, how common are you hearing possible buyers who are a little bit spooked by the markets right? Is that affecting your work, Mark Seawick?
Not at the moment. We're anticipating that the longer the tariff chaos is perpetuated, the more likely it seems. Every pundit, every economist, everybody who's out there is saying that inflation is soon to rise and growth is going to start to diminish. So we're anticipating that within the next 3 to 6 months, we're going to start to see more and more of that kind of thing taking place.
Let me go around the table and ask the same question. Again, this is from James here. What are you seeing in this way, Lainey? So James says, his mom decided I'm staying put after seeing the market volatility.
I think, honestly, I think in the past 5 years, I think that's a lot of what people are doing. I think now we're at a point where it's gotten worse based on the fact that the market volatility has been extreme over the past few weeks. But I think that's where we've been since COVID, where if people, if his mom's probably in a fortunate where she doesn't have to move, she doesn't have to downsize. That's part of where we are with the market, right? Unless people have to move, unless there's a reason where she can't live on her own and she needs to, or she needs to get to one level living, right? As you are seeing that. And so people that have those options and are not willing to take that risk now, that's what we're seeing. So I think it's been a problem. I think it is going to continue to be a problem, especially again with this market volatility, especially at the higher price points where people just feel that I think are more in the market, in the stock market, and so they feel that affects more.
Okay, Angie?
So I think that on a micro level, per person, there are those things happening, but on a macro level, there are, 30 people lined up virtually outside of every house to step in where somebody might. So if we lose half of our buyer pool,
right,
we're still going to be selling houses like crazy because there's such a huge backlog. So I don't particularly see that we're going to suddenly go lower or crash or any of that, because when I have a listing and there's 72 showings and I get 25 offers, that tells me there's 24 people that are going to come back next week.
Right.
It's hard to tell people who are looking to buy a first home, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, whatever your age is, that it wasn't always like this.
Right.
That everybody at this table can remember a time when you didn't have to go 50K, 100K over asking. You didn't have to waive inspection. You didn't feel like if I don't decide the next hour, I've got no chance. Or we're going to be 25 offers after 72 people see something in a week. It wasn't always like this, right?
Never.
It feels like it's been like this for a while.
I call it the old days. Whenever I meet with a new client and I say, listen, I'm going to talk to you about the old days and I'm going to talk to you about now.
You're so ancient, Angie.
I know. Well, the old days was what, 2018 and before.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So now it's been
roughly a decade
7
ago.
years.
Yeah.
No, I think we started seeing it. I think at least 10 years we've been in the seller's market.
But still,
it's
people
gotten
can
progressively worse.
remember.
I know. Right.
Like it wasn't
Right.
50 years ago.
No.
But it's starting to feel like it's pretty cemented. And for all the reasons our guests have been explaining, there's not a reason to expect the market to change dramatically better for buyers anytime soon. So on that note, here's Dan, who says, Evan, would creating a situation where the only way for towns to get more tax revenue is to build more homes be a solution to get more housing? And
I love Dan.
how would this be done?
Yeah.
So Dan, two things. I'm going to let our guests jump in on what they think, but I would say two things about this, Dan, just in terms of recent political history. Governor Hochul did have a housing proposal that she wanted every municipality, no matter your size, rural or urban, whatever, to increase housing stock by at least 1%. And there were all kinds of carrot and stick tax incentives attached to this. And the blowback that the Hochul administration got, and I bet you was this 5-7 years ago now, was huge. For a lot of towns, there was some NIMBYism. A lot of towns said either we can't do it, we don't have space for it, we don't want to do it. And it was politically sort of dead in the water. I wonder if that would change now, or I wonder if a federal, Angie's going to go to Washington and change everything. So what are you going to ask them to do?
No,
we got a real problem here.
No. We really do need more federal funding around some of the first of all, incentives for building. I mean, that question that he just asked
Incentives for building.
is great. Do I think it's going to help? I mean, everything gets stuck in red tape for 5 years. But these conversations have to start. They really do. And, let's not even skip over the fact that it's a trickle down. Like, what's our homeless population like? Like, the people that used to want to rent a $600 a month apartment now can't get into it because that's a $900 apartment.
Yeah.
And it just, it's really scaring me.
And I think that's important to point out that it's not just home buying. Right, we are seeing that in the rental market, that it is, and that's why you're seeing the things that are getting built are actually apartments, because it is more feasible for developers to build an apartment because there's more units, and so the return on investment is significantly better if they're renting and they're hanging on to it and they're seeing that cash flow, versus building something and then selling it. So I think it's not just the stuff that's for sale, even though that's primarily where the three of us work, but you're seeing it everywhere, that housing is it's become significantly less affordable in our area.
And one of the things I would love to see, how many vacant buildings exist in downtown Rochester? Nobody, and of course, you can't convert every single building in downtown Rochester into residential.
Yeah, right.
It is difficult. I get that, but until the mayor, and I'm just throwing it right out there, until the mayor does something about violence. I mean, driving down here, the trash on the streets, disgusting. And until you incentivize people or create an environment in which people are feeling safe and they feel as though they're not going to be walking past trash on the streets, we're not going to be able to have the opportunity to get developers to come downtown and start to convert some of these buildings. But that's a real opportunity right there.
I mean, do you think the mayor would say, look, you're cherry picking, it was one day, we're doing a lot of work on those subjects, or do you think that's a consistent issue?
I think that this is a consistent issue. Yeah. Of course, the mayor is going to tell me personally that that it was a bad day. But no, this is just day in and day out for years on end. I mean, the same properties in downtown Rochester with boarded up windows for 5 years since COVID. I mean, come on, do something about it for God's sake.
You're saying those neighborhoods deserve better.
The neighborhoods deserve better. This community deserves better. Prospective homeowners who are locked out of the ability, yes. Developers deserve better. We all deserve better. And unfortunately, he's shown no leadership in regard to this issue.
On the safety issue, Mark, I mean, you guys tell me, what's your largest buyer pool right now? Mine is single women.
Oh, yeah.
Single women?
Single women, because they're not waiting to get married to buy a house. I've got
they're
tons
college
of them.
educated in a way that men are. They surpass men in terms of college education.
Sure, so
they're making more money.
They're the second largest group of. But they've honestly, they've always been a big piece
for a while.
They've always been a big piece of my buyer market.
But you think about what's an affordable place to buy a house? Well, let's go to the city. Single women are not going to go live alone in a neighborhood that's not safe.
Yeah, agreed. Completely agree. So.
There's something that I would not have expected, though. That's really interesting.
What?
The single women being...
They're the second largest. I mean, besides couples, they're the next group. That's significantly more than single men in terms of buying on their own.
Interesting. After we take our only break, we'll come back to your phone calls. I've got a pile more of your emails. I've got a seller story. I've got a lot to share with you as we talk about the state of our housing market. If you are a seller, congratulations. If you are a buyer, our commiseration. But we want to hear from you about what you are experiencing in the market as our guests are talking about what their clients are seeing and also some of the dynamics that are causing this to be the number one seller's market in the country by many different metrics. And it is not even really close. Lainey Bittner, Angie Flack-Brown, Mark Seawick all here with us, and your feedback next.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Excellus Blue Cross Blue Shield, believing that everyone deserves to be cared for and to live well. Through community investments, partnerships, and education, Excellus Blue Cross Blue Shield is working to address health inequities. More at excellusbcbs.com.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Couple points from Dallas. Dallas said, there's probably a lot of people who are broke, and entertain the idea of selling their house just so they have some money in the bank. Angie, what do you think about that point?
I'm seeing a lot. So Brighton just redid their assessments, and then they kind of canceled it, and now they're starting to talk about it again. And what I'm seeing is people are saying, look, I bought this house in Brighton 15 years ago. Now you're telling me it's worth twice what it was. Now you're telling me my taxes are going to double. I got to sell my house. I can't stay here. right? So yes,
taxes may or may not double.
may or may not, but that's the thought
that's the
process.
mentality. But it's
And
not usually
that
what
is,
happens.
I mean,
right.
part of the reason I don't want to get too far off track here, but part of the reason that they had to pull the assessment of a month and a half ago or something was because everybody was so up in arms.
Yep.
I assumed that this is going to be an opportunity for them to just reclaim the narrative and say, okay, yes, your tax assessment is going to go up, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your taxes is going to increase as much.
My personal assessment went up $230,000, but my taxes went down $340.
So there you go. So that's a narrative that they should have. Instead, you got everybody in the town of Brighton now
But-
running around with their hair on fire.
But regarding assessments, Henrietta's town supervisor, Steve Schultz, was on this program saying he wants to propose an entirely different way of conducting home assessments. He says the current system often overvalues. People feel like, they'll never get that price. Or, well, now they feel like they'll get the price, but they can't afford to buy if they have to. He says it leads to less market activity. Do you agree that the assessment system needs to change, Mark?
I think there needs to be some kind of standard imposed by the state because, yes, there's too much mystery involved. I mean, when was the last time the town of Brighton actually reassessed? Was it 8 years?
2018.
Okay, there we go. So I thought it was, yeah.
I'm going to jump right in and say absolutely. I completely agree with that because I know I went through the assessment process for myself years ago, and it's basically like you have to prove yourself innocent instead of the opposite, right? Like you have to argue with them. I originally asked the assessor in the town I live in, what are the comparables? What are you basing this on? I've shown all the comps that are near me, and they couldn't show me comps. It's just based on, it's at the time it seemed like based on a certain percentage, based on what the market was going right, and it's not. So I think the assessment process is an awful one.
I received 22 requests back in February, March when
18 here.
When Brighton was first being reassessed, and so as we're trying to figure out what the actual reassessment should be, we're looking, and there were any number of occasions, I hate to say this, where the town's assessment coincidentally matched Zillow's value of the property.
That is awful.
I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's not great.
So to your point, should there be a little bit more scrutiny? Should there be some changes? Yeah, I think so.
Okay. We got a full agreement in the room on that one. Let me get Amanda on the phone in Rochester. Hey, Amanda, go ahead.
Hey, Evan, how's it going?
Pretty good, I guess. Go ahead.
I was curious. The gentleman was talking about how the atmosphere in downtown needs to change in order to bring in prospective investors. And I was wondering how he said it. It sounded like he was concerned both about trash and violence. And now I've seen the trash. I live downtown. I live in the Monroe Ave neighborhood, and I frequent High Falls and Center City. So I've seen the trash, but I was wondering about the violence part because unless he sees those as equals, which would be understandable, but for in his case, maybe. But like last time I walked from High Falls to Monroe Ave, it's about 2 miles. I did it at 10:30 at night, and I saw one other person, and it was a woman half my size. So I'm wondering where the violence is.
Well, I think that violence has probably decreased because if you're walking 2 miles and running into one person en route, that's not a lot. And you're probably younger than I am, but I remember a time in the not too distant past, 20 years ago.
What I would like to do is challenge you to talk about Rochester as it is now, and also not to accidentally give into tropes about how the inner city is so violent.
Well, we both have our opinion, but
in my experience, it isn't.
Okay, in my experience, it is.
Thank you very much.
So,
okay, thank you.
Okay, well,
Thank
there we
you.
go. Difference of opinion.
Well, I mean, there is data on this that I don't have at my fingertips. There is something that Mark is saying about perception. I think part of what Amanda is doing is challenging the perception to match the reality, as Amanda has experienced it. Yeah. And that's probably, and I appreciate the points Amanda is making. It's a whole other conversation in which we'll call City Hall afterwards. We'll say,
there we go.
Mark Seawick asked us to call you, so.
Hey, Malik.
But again, I do think, she talks about, walking 2 miles, and before she cut me off, I was about to say that I distinctly remember a point in time when there was a vibrant downtown Rochester, which I so dearly miss. The ability to walk downtown and just run into a lot of people and be able to go from one restaurant to a club to a different restaurant. And like those were great times, and I do miss those. And I hope that there's some point in time in the future when we might be able to reclaim that, but I think that's a long way off.
All right. Amanda, thank you. Let's see here. Carol in Brighton is next. Hey, Carol, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say, as a senior with an outdated house from the 60s and 70s, that I had a wonderful experience selling my house with Angie. It sold in a weekend.
You paid her.
I know, right?
You paid her to do this. I know it.
No, I was not paid.
I'm kidding.
But I do have to give her a shout out, and if for any seniors that have to work with a realtor, it was really a fantastic experience. So. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Carol.
She's a great agent. Of course, you had a great experience.
Hey, Carol, I'm just going to jump in here and say that your experience with her as an agent is very much the experience that we as agents have with Angie. She is there are 3,600 of us in the 6-county region, and she is in the top 5 or 10 in terms of those agents who are just beloved by other agents.
Stop saying nice things. You're supposed to be competing.
Oh yeah,
no, we don't do that anymore. We support each other.
We're down to 2,800 now. We're down to 20.
Oh, is that right?
We're down
Okay,
quite
well,
a bit.
that's good.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
you.
Laney and Mark's clients, go ahead and call now. Carol, thank you for that. Now, let me get an email, and this comes from Pamela, who says, Evan, I'll be selling my old home in the Crescent after our family member completes his move into his new home. We're planning to use the funds to pay for our child's college education expenses, so we're going to ask high, about $90,000, and see what happens. We've got about 6 or 7 flippers with interest to buy. The home needs repairs and renovations, but it's got great bones like hardwood floors, 2 full bathrooms, a full attic and basement, and more amenities than other homes in the area, such as a driveway, off-street parking in the city, with a garage with electricity, and a nice large backyard. So they're going for it. They're going to aim high for the neighborhood, which she says is $90,000. I don't know exactly the neighborhood. I don't know the comps, but this is probably the right time to shoot high if you've got a property you think you can get there. Yeah.
I think to me, pricing is crucial right now. You're seeing where you still need to pull the comparables. You still need to see what things have sold around you that are similar to your property, and then you need to have a conversation with your realtor about what the strategy is, because you can't just go in and want to price it really high and see how it goes. Because honestly, these days buyers are expecting to pay more than list price.
You're also very smart. The buyers are very educated. They know every sale on the street.
Right. And they're not, and so I think in terms of pricing it high, I think if you price it above, and if you price it too high and a buyer thinks I'm going to have to pay well over list price, that can be a negative for you. So you really have to talk with your agent, see what the comps are doing, see what the buyers out there are doing, and just kind of make sure that it's in the right place to get you the most money.
Anything to add there, Mark, Angie?
She knows.
I would only suggest that she probably, the seller probably wants to do everything that she can to make the house look as good as she possibly can, so that she's going to attract owner-occupants as opposed to investors, because selling to an owner-occupant, she's going to garner more money than she would, and she needs to create the bidding war. So just by selling it off market to an investor, that's not the way to go. You're leaving money on the table.
Yeah, you definitely want it to be in the best condition as possible.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Pamela, good luck to you. It's connections@wxxi.org is the email address. Sharing your stories about how you're dealing with this housing market in our region, which continues to be, by many metrics, the #1 seller's market in the country. That means if you're a buyer, good luck. Inventory is tiny. It's about a fifth or less of where it was a decade ago at this point, and that spring influx, it's still tiny. So let me get back to a couple of points that have come in here. Charlie says, Evan, my daughter and her wife were married in 2022. They saved their money. I helped them a little, and they looked for a house in the height of the housing boom. They were priced out of Park Avenue and even the Winton area for the houses that they liked, and, more important, they felt safe in. Then they found a house that they loved in Swilburg in what she refers to as a gayborhood. And they bought it. She tells me the neighbors all look after each other. She loves it there. That's from Charlie. Never heard the term gayborhood. Am I just behind the times?
I haven't heard that term.
Have you driven through Swilburg? Because there's a lot of flags. But it's great. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, as the gay individual around the table, it is an old term.
Is it an old term?
Evan.
Wait, what?
I didn't. Yeah, I've never.
Gayborhood? Yeah, you know this.
But
Yeah, of
I
course.
think what I love about that story is that they were originally looking in certain areas, and then they expanded beyond that. So I think that's important for buyers to understand, is that the more open you can be about where you want to live, what you're looking for, the better off you're going to be. So I think the fact that they were originally looking in 2 different neighborhoods, decided they couldn't, and so they opened it up to another neighborhood. I think that's important to note.
I love the story also because it's exactly what people are supposed to, as I was talking earlier about just getting your foot in the door, just buying anything so that you can start to build the equity over time.
Yep.
And so maybe you can't afford Park Avenue today, but Swilberg's a great neighborhood. It is a very affordable neighborhood. So they've done the right thing, and congratulations to them. That's awesome.
It sounds like they had a good realtor who was willing to make that jump.
True.
I mean, how many times do I hear from people that say, my realtor sends me houses, automatically, and none of them I can afford. I mean, you have to have the conversations. You have to have somebody with some experience. You have to have somebody that knows other realtors to get information, what's coming up.
Yep.
It's a huge leg up. Interview 3 realtors before you choose anybody.
And let me see, Angie,
Mark,
Lainey. Yeah, okay, there we go.
There's 3 in this room.
There we go.
Tom says, we are downtown residents in our 70s, and while there are areas in any town or city that are hotspots for violence, Center City is not one of them. As for the trash, Walking for Rochester and Downtown Rocks are organizations helping with that problem. So that's from Tom. Yeah, I mean, I always love seeing people care about their neighborhoods, pick up trash. Those are organizations that Tom says are doing that.
I think I know, Tom.
Tom,
Tom, you know that I own a 26-unit building right around the corner from you. So, I mean, it's not as though I am opposed to downtown Rochester. I love downtown Rochester. I have a lot of rental units down there. I just wish that it were more of what it was. So, and what it can be.
You're getting old, Mark.
All right. So, first of all, Rue says we have pulled census data. We've looked at the incomes, the housing prices, interest rates, and found that 88,000 households in Monroe County cannot afford to buy right now. Their incomes are under $75,000. That is from Rue. And John says, Evan, Jamie Dimon, and Jerome Powell both say we're headed for a recession. Why wouldn't housing prices come down? Okay. So
I'll tackle that one. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Because Jamie Dimon and Jerome Powell and others, and I agree. I definitely agree. Not just we're going to see a recession. We're going to see increased inflation. We're going to see unemployment go up, and together collectively that spells stagflation. So I definitely agree. But why is it that it's not going to necessarily happen here? Because they're talking about the United States as a whole, in the macro. But there are, of course, always going to be pockets of difference that exist elsewhere. So, again, when you go back to the fact that back in 2018, March of 2018, I said this earlier, there were 2,500 or so single-family homes in the 6-county region, and now there are only 600 and some, 3,500 single-family. It's just an enormous drop. And when you look specifically in Monroe County, and you know there are only about 135 single-family homes available in vibrant neighborhoods, there's just nothing that's going to go on over the course of the next 5 years that's going to cause that dynamic to change.
Laney and Angie, do you agree that even a recession would not dent where the prices are in the housing market locally right now?
You want to take it
No,
first?
you go ahead first.
I mean, it may, and again, no, I'm not an economist. I could see prices going down a little bit because we might pull some of the buyers out that are causing the competition and the higher prices. But like I said, we've got 24 people lined up to buy every house.
Yeah.
You have to pull a lot of buyers out.
Well,
You have to pull a lot of buyers out.
I mean, we're still seeing 10% increase in median sales price, right? And we're still seeing things go on average 112% over list price. So we've been seeing for quite a while these numbers where median price has been going up. In 2017, our median price was 125,000, and now we're at 235.
That's Monroe County.
Monroe County, yep, Monroe County. And so there's a significant right. So we're one of the most affordable areas in the country, which is part of the reason why we're in where we are, is because when you look at the rest of the country, the median sales price is over $400,000. I think closer to $450,000. So we're still significantly lower than that, which drives some people here, which makes more people apt to buy instead of rent. So I agree with Mark. I don't see anything really changing us, because I've noticed a difference from a national perspective where you're seeing, the Floridas and things like that, where things are on the market a little bit longer, and we're not seeing that.
I will just two real quick things. Zillow 2 days ago came out with yet another study. This study shows that Rochester is going to be the number 3 community in the nation in terms of price appreciation between March of this past year and March of 2026. Yay, good for us. But to this individual's point, it's only going to be a 1.8% increase.
Wow.
1.8.
And we're still third in the country.
And we're still third in the country. So, indeed, I guess this goes back to what I was saying earlier about, Jerome Powell and Jamie Dimon talking about the country in the macro.
Right.
But if you think about the fact that, again, we've had a 62 to 65% increase in the value of property here in Monroe County over the course of the past 5 years, those numbers are starting to come down. But I just don't see them going underwater.
What about this? People are looking at what's going on right now at the stock market and all these things, and they're saying my house value is going up. My stock portfolio is going down. I'm not selling my house. Right? There's another reason people aren't selling.
Well,
They're sitting on a pile of money.
But you also see where that also is, maybe an investor who, on my stock market, like things are dropping. People are looking to diversify their portfolios and looking at buying into real estate. And again, I think we've seen a ton of investors move into our market because we are affordable. And because, again, if they're trying to diversify their portfolios off of the stock market, it's a great way to do it and affordable.
Well, one of the things I've been coaching the agents in my brokerage is to reframe this as this is a great opportunity. Yes, it's still very, very difficult for buyers to enter into this market, but it's a great opportunity because you look at the volatility in the stock market. That kind of volatility doesn't happen in real estate. I mean, you've got to go back to 2008 before the Great Recession before you see any significant reduction in the value of real estate. But at best, it was probably a 4 to 6% decrease during the Great Recession. So in many ways, we're coaching our buyers that, this might be a scary time, but still real estate is a safe harbor when compared to so many other investments.
Yep.
Here is Ken, who says, more than 15 years ago, I wanted to buy the vacant residential lot adjacent to my house in Rochester, but the city refused to sell it. The city insisted I erect a building of some sort on that lot to increase its value, but I wanted the lot for gardening and landscaping. Today, the empty lot is still there, owned by the city. Rochester lost 15 plus years of property taxes. My house and lot were in a lower income part of the city, and no one was going to build a $100,000 new house on an empty lot in a neighborhood where the average home was worth $40,000 to $70,000. Such short-sighted thinking by the city. That's from Ken. So, I understand why the city wants people to build new housing instead of gardens. But I also understand Ken's point that we need to be a little more judicious where that's happening and realistic there. So sorry about that. Another listener wants to know, when do the tiny home builders start springing up here?
Not soon enough.
Not soon enough. And that's what we talked about earlier with the towns not allowing tiny homes on people's lots.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're thinking tiny homes would be as part of an existing lot, like an additional, like an
the ADUs.
ADU as an ADU. Okay.
Or maybe it would be really fun to buy 2 acres and put 10 tiny houses on it. I don't know,
a little community.
But can't do it because of regulation.
Right.
Okay. So I guess the answer is that's still pretty tightly controlled, and depending on where you live, maybe it might be a NIMBY issue. Judy says people need housing, but animals and birds need habitat. I saw new housing development in Hilton, and all I saw was habitat loss for all the wildlife that might have thrived there. That's from Judy. Yeah, you're not wrong, Judy. There's a balance that's needed. But when Mark talks about, 18,000 units that we are behind, we're talking about population, we're talking about housing need, and we're talking about what the market has created and offered. And so I hear you there, Judy. Nobody wants to take all of green space away, but I think our guest also earlier this hour said there's some municipalities with a lot of green space, and they're looking for a balance.
I do love some municipalities. Pittsford immediately comes to mind. You've got 100 acres that you want to build on. 50 of those acres need to be set aside for green space.
That's right.
So I do think that there are some very, very forward-thinking municipalities in that regard, finding a really good balance.
So as we get ready to wrap here, I'm going to go around the table. I'll start with Angie. What would you advise buyers and sellers generally here? And again, I'm not talking about a specific house or et cetera. I'm talking about understanding the dynamics in this market right now, so that if you are buying or if you are selling, you're going in with a smart approach.
So always get some advice from somebody that knows what they're talking about. Talk to your investment people, talk to your financial advisor. But again, I always recommend interview 3 realtors, because everyone's going to have a different perspective, and you want to find someone that really, really understands the area that you're looking in, understands the complexities of the market. Don't just go in blind. Don't walk into an open house and just write an offer with whoever's standing at the door, because you're looking at a big chunk of money you could lose, and or legal things.
Okay, about 45 seconds. Lainey?
I think, yeah, I agree with. I mean, you want to sit down with a realtor and you want to have because it's all about strategy these days. I don't think every house isn't selling for every seller. It's not as extreme as it used to be, and so there has to be a strategy in place for getting the most out of your house that you're selling. And for buyers, same thing. You have to have a strategy that buyers are. You've got to figure out what you're going to do and what you're going to buy and what the best strategy is for you.
Mark Seawick?
My advice to buyers, as I said a few times, buy. Just get your foot in the door.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do that in order to ensure your future. 2-3 years of increase in the value of the property that you purchase will offset whatever it is you feel as though you may have overpaid originally. So that's my strong advice.
Don't worry
Angie?
about interest rates right now. Interest rates are fine. People are like, I'm waiting for them to go down. If you wait for the interest rate to go down 1 point, the price is going to be up $50,000.
Yeah,
Well,
it's so true.
And based on the bond market, it's not a guarantee that those rates are coming down anyway, right?
I do not see, the bond vigilantes are really, I mean, we'll talk at some point in time about bond vigilantes. The fifth, we got Congress, we got the U.S. Supreme Court, we've got the executive branch. Then, of course, the fourth is the press. Bond vigilantes are now having influence on the direction of U.S. Policy in a way that I think is really interesting.
You have piqued my interest.
Okay, let's talk.
Come back and talk about bond
Vigilantes. Yeah.
Okay, Mark Seawick. And as I go, I meant to ask this earlier, but I thought this would be insightful. Just real briefly, is the average age of your first-time buyers going up?
Yes, significantly.
Okay.
No.
Lainey's staying the same. Okay.
Really?
I'll give you the national statistic. The average age of a first-time buyer now, what do you think it is, Evan?
35.
Not bad. 38.
I was going to say 37.
37. That was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, insane, isn't it? We used to buy. I bought my first property when I was 25.
Yeah,
Angie.
27.
Yeah.
24.
There you go.
I want to thank you for giving us an update on this totally fascinating housing market that's good for some, really challenging for others. And thanks for your expertise, Angie Flack Brown. Good luck in Washington. Tell us how it goes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Lainey Bittner, great talking to you. Thank you for being here.
Sure. Thanks, Evan.
Mark Seawick, always good. Thank you very
Great
much.
seeing you, bud.
More connections coming up in just a moment.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.